Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's Mike Ames Show. We are, of course, joined by a very tropical-looking Big Mike.
Yes, it is. And if there's anybody out there that knows why I'm called Jackanory and we're doing a show on storytelling, you can put that in the comments. You have to be of a certain age, I think. But yeah, here I am. Yeah, it's very true. Yeah, man.
Yes. And we're, of course, as well joined by our special guest today who's going to be telling us all about storytelling as a business tool, Johnny Gillett. Hello, Johnny.
Hi, good morning. Great to be here.
Or in your case, good evening, because you're in Malaysia, aren't you?
I am in Malaysia at the moment, yeah.
So, the wonders of modern technology. Can I just say why I invited Johnny on the show? I use stories a lot, as anybody that knows me will know. And I think they're a great business tool. I use them in all sorts of different ways. And I thought, got to be honest with you, I was pretty good, actually. Then I came across Johnny and realized how little I knew. So I wanted him to come on the show, partly for you, dear viewers, but mainly for me, really, so I can learn all this stuff. So that's what he's here for today.
I hope you still feel like a good storyteller. I hope I didn't reduce your confidence in any way.
It's good for him to have that happen every now and again. It's good for him. It's good for him. Okay. All right. So as always, guys, we like to see who's watching us. So if you are watching us, say hello in the comments and we'll say hello back. So whilst we're getting started, the first thing I want to talk to you about, Johnny, is why is storytelling so important? Why is it so powerful?
I think the thing I really like people to focus on and remember is that stories basically make a connection. You know, when we first meet up with somebody, quite often we will tell them a story. You know, in the days when we were able to travel around and that's starting to come back, we would perhaps tell a story about how bad the traffic was or what the weather's like. You know, stories are a way that we make connections. And humans do that. It's a very unique and distinctive human feature. And so it's something that's intrinsic about us being together as humans is storytelling.
Yeah, I suppose it goes back to
when you're down the pub and someone says, "Have I got a story for you?" Inside you're thinking, "Yeah, bring it on," because it's like exciting, isn't it?
Everyone loves a good story, you know. Yeah, and I think the thing is though, one of the things that I think in business where stories really come in handy is where if you're presenting things like data and facts and figures and stuff, they can go right over your head. Really difficult to connect with, but you tell a story about how those things affect someone, then you start to get sort of an empathy for it, and you'll remember it. You'll forget the figures. You have to actually really work to remember them, right? But if you have a story, you're going to remember that the next day. You're going to tell that story to somebody else. So the information really comes alive.
Someone said there's a famous quote. People often forget what you say. I'm going to paraphrase this because I won't get it right. People often forget what you say and they say and what you show them and what you do, but they'll never forget how you make them feel. And I think a story makes you feel things, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And I think, Mike, did you say something in LinkedIn previously about the way that all the hormones are kicking off inside when you hear a story told? Like
yeah. There's three different. Yeah. Well, it's absolutely true. Well, you said earlier when we were offline, you said this, which I really liked actually, because you've got that emotion, logic. I've got a story and I'm going to get something across to you, but it's like emotion, isn't it? Really?
Yes,
I think it really connects with people.
Yeah, but actually, the logic and the emotion. If we think about the brain, we have this kind of simple idea. It's not completely accurate, but the logic is one hemisphere, and the emotion and creativity is the other hemisphere. When you hear a story, there's all sorts of communication going on right across the brain. Because you have the logic of the story, that it has to make sense, right? But you have the emotion of the story that you're carried along and thinking, what happened? What did they do? So your brain is using its full capacity. And there's all this traffic going across both hemispheres, which is really powerful for, being engaged in that experience.
Yeah. See, I think it goes back to kind of caveman times. So humans have told stories forever, and that's how they used to pass on knowledge and things like that. So it makes sense that that's how our brains work. So we understand why they're so powerful. But what constitutes a good story? What's one that has that most power, if it makes sense?
Well, generally, a good story is going to be about how a problem gets solved. I often talk about dilemma and resolution. I'm not the first to say this. This is commonly recognized about stories, that you have somebody who is in some kind of problem. And, you know, when you look at all the movies, they're all about trying to save the world or about trying to win back some lost love. You know, there's a problem and it needs to be resolved in some way. And so, but the thing is, not all stories end well, right? And the reason we feel really disappointed if a story doesn't end well is because we have the expectation for it to end well.
Do you think
as
well
to be programmed that way? You know?
Those stories connect better because there's more of an emotional burst. You know, if you watch movies like, what was that movie with I See Ghosts? You know, at the end we found out that he was a
Sixth
ghost.
Sense.
Yeah. It's like that's not quite the same thing, but we didn't expect that. It wasn't what we thought. It comes up and wow, it just connects with it, and you don't forget it. Have I got time for a very quick story? You've
got 30 seconds.
Right. Okay. This is a true story that my father was in the army. By the way, if you're a consultant or you sell knowledge, this is a great story, right? Absolutely. So he was in the army and he was in Egypt after the war. And he wasn't a man of culture, my father, God rest his soul. But last day, him and his mate said, well, we should probably go and look at the pyramids then. He was there for like 6 months or something. So they went to the pyramids. They went really early. You have to go really early in Egypt. They went there, got as soon as the sun was coming up, they were there. Arab bloke comes across and says, I'll take you to the top basically for the price of a packet of cigarettes. Dad, no, we can find, and there's the top, isn't it? You know where it is, exactly where it is. So him and his mate started climbing. They gave up at about 11 o'clock because it was way too hot, and they were only a third of the way up there because even though it looked easy, when you got into the detail, it absolutely wasn't. And he told me that story loads of times, and he used to say, it's one of the biggest regrets of my life. For a price of a packet of cigarettes, I could have stood on the seventh wonder of the world, the only one that's left, and surveyed the desert, and I didn't. And I think that when you're trying to convince people to use consultants, it's exactly the challenge we all face. You are the guide. All you charge in comparison is a packet of cigarettes, and you can give them that route to where they want to be. And I've used that story loads of times as a way of illustrating the value of consultants.
But you know, that story works, Mike, because what it does, it sets up an expectation, right? It was your father, right? He's a military man. He's been there for 6 months and he's decided finally to go to the pyramids. And we expect this man perhaps to be able to, I mean, when I imagine a pyramid, I imagine it's just walking straight up, right? So why have a guide? So you think if anyone's going to be able to do it, it'd be him. And it turns out he cannot, right? So our expectation has been built. There's a problem getting up to the top of the pyramid. He's unable to fulfill it. And because we have that deflation in the story, the expectation, then we have the message, right? And the message is, you know, he didn't invest.
Invest and hire an expert and get to where you need to be. That is the subtext of it all, really. But I've used it loads of times, and it always. I'm
going to have to interrupt in a minute, Mike, because we've got a lot to get through, and I know that
we've got never 30 seconds, Mike. They're never 30 seconds.
I was going to say that was 2 minutes, Michael. I was very strict on the timings. So we kind of understand now, I think, why they're so powerful and sort of what constitutes a good one. So can we put that in a business sense now? If I have a story, how am I supposed to use that for my business to help my business?
Yeah, well, I think there are 4 key areas, and they're kind of related in pairs, I think, as well. I mean, I talk about selling and marketing, which are related to one another, but also management and vision. And I think these are 4 key areas in which storytelling is really powerful. I mean, when we're talking about selling, what I'm really saying is like not just selling a product, it's the selling of yourself. It's the way that you present yourself. I mean, just in a very small way, I've worked a lot with people who are going into interviews or into pitches, and you know, they need a story to be able to sell themselves better because they are more than just their CV and their qualifications. You know, the CV and the qualifications is all the data.
It's a form of persuasion, isn't it, Johnny? That is.
Yeah.
It's a form of persuasion.
Well, actually, all of these are a form of persuasion in many ways. You think about marketing. What I'm trying to do in marketing is I'm wanting to tell the story in a specific way for a specific group of people, specific set of needs, right? So I'm trying to get people to be aware of what I have so they're persuaded to come engage. To us, right? To engage, right? Management, I'm trying to persuade people to behave in a certain way or to take on certain ideas, right? And vision is I'm trying to persuade everyone we're going this way, right? This is what we're trying to achieve. So it's all persuasion. Stories You know, that's one of the great things they do is they move people both emotionally and almost physically.
Because again, though, I think that's a really important point, because they're all, just looking at them and listening to you there, they're all a form of buy-in, aren't they?
Yeah.
Buy in and buy this thing, buy in and come to me, buy in and do what I'd like you to do, and buy in. And hey, look, this is what we're going to achieve if you buy the vision. It's a form of buy-in, isn't it, really?
Yes, it is. And that's why I say the stories are about making a connection.
Yeah.
You know, I'm
sure.
if I'm listening to somebody telling a story, I start to empathize with them. I start to see myself in the experience that's being portrayed and presented to me. And that makes me more inclined to buy in.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Because I suppose as well with all of those, like we said earlier when we were talking before we came online, that for me, I automatically think of selling. That's the only real business use of it. But to think of it as a leader, which is what that management and vision was about, right? It's about leadership, and to have it to make you a good leader, to make sure that your team is on board, that you're all in this together, which ultimately makes your business more powerful, more scalable, more sellable, more, you know, more valuable. It's a really fascinating. I'd never thought about using storytelling in that way, which sounds silly now that I think about it.
Well, quite often I say that for management, what we're looking at a lot of the time is stories for learning. So the stories that are being shared are about something that was learned.
Okay.
So for instance, the pyramid story, you might apply that to saying, you know, in a more sales context, persuading in that aspect, because it's about, you know, the need to invest in a consultant or an advisor, right? But an expert. But actually, it's about learning as well. It's about recognizing that sometimes I have to make that investment, and that's not just necessarily bringing an expert on board, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
fantastic. We have got a statement here from Gavin, which I think is a really good thing here. It's a great way to explain your why. A storytelling is a great way to explain why you're doing something, why someone should buy you.
And you know, the interesting thing is you look at the big corporates, right? They have these strong origin stories. They're like superheroes in many ways, right? And a lot of that is telling the why. Apple, you know, the figure for Apple is Steve Jobs. Even though he's passed on, it's Steve Jobs' spirit that still survives. And the story of him, you know, struggling when he was younger and trying to build, you know, in the garage and all this kind of stuff. And the David and Goliath attitude. You know, even though they became Goliath themselves, they still have the David and Goliath story, right? Alibaba with Jack Ma, right? His origin story, you know, about the English teacher who tried to bring people together, who saw this idea for an online market, right? These are all the why stories that come from the instigator, and their story then becomes the whole corporate story.
Perhaps that's the first story everyone should really crack, is why they do what they do the way they do it. Really, which is what Jobs was all about. This is what we do, but this is why we do it this way. And it is him, isn't it, really? His story, we've all seen him online. I think that's a really great thing to start with if you are going to create a story and use it, is, hey, guys, this is what I do and why I do it.
Well, the thing is, you know, I would say that in a lot of cases, a lot of people are doing already what you're doing. So, you know, to say what you do is going to actually be a common story. To say why you're doing it is
the way you do it.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. All right. So I now understand that, you know, storytelling has a basis in business that's not just in selling. It has areas throughout your whole business, whether it's what you own, how you speak to your people, how you speak to your team, how you grow. So can we go into a bit more detail about how you come to create a powerful story? Kind of what are the stages that make it compelling, effective, powerful?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think let's just look at it in very basic terms, because I know that a lot of people are actually quite frightened of the concept of storytelling. They know that they should do it. They know it's powerful, but it seems like a big jump. I mean, I have people come up to me and say, like, Johnny, it's fine for you. You've been doing this for years, but I just cannot even remember the punchline of a joke. How can I remember how to tell a story, right, in front of other people when the stakes feel quite high? So let's get down to just something really basic, all right? I'd say a story has 4 steps that you go through. You call them stages, I call them steps, right?
Okay.
So all stories, they begin with a setting. And when we're talking about it in this kind of context, we're talking about a setting from which we have aspiration. We want to move somewhere. We want to achieve something. What are the outcomes that you want? So
so in the pyramid story, that would be being in Egypt is the setting, you know, in the early days, and the aspiration was to get to the top of the pyramid.
Yes, great. Yeah, very good.
And if you wanted to use that presumably as an analogy, the setting would be, I'd like people to use me, but they can't see the value of using an expert. They think they can do it themselves. because that's a connection as well, isn't it? As an analogy.
Yes. Yeah. No. That's right. I mean, stories, they have this flip-flop kind of way of working. You know, I can tell a story about a direct lived experience, but it can also be an analogy for something else as well. You know. So yeah, we can look at those two things in tandem, really. So we you know, you're right, Kirsty, to focus on that part, to identify that. So after that, what we then have is this attempt by, I'm going to use the term protagonist, which is like the main character of a story, which in a lot of cases will be you, right? Yourself. So the protagonist now wants to move forward, but they face challenges.
Okay.
So they try out things from the past, their old ways of going. Okay. So, and the thing about to remember here is, in this part of the story, you cannot be successful. You have to show your failures. That you try the old ways, there's limited solutions that you're achieving. It's not quite what you wanted. Okay.
Right.
So
one would be if I'd sold in person previously and I did the same things when I tried to sell online, but when I tried to sell online, it didn't work in the same way. That would be a sort of similar one. Yeah. Yeah.
And that could be like you were telling your story of how you pivoted from the offline to the online, right? So you'll be saying one of the things is, you know, I had this, so the setting is COVID and the things that brought that about, and you have your desired outcomes, your aspirations. Now we get to the point of saying, and then I found suddenly that all the things that I tried before that always used to work weren't working for me anymore. Yeah. And you can give me a couple of examples within that if you were telling the story, right? Okay. But then we have a breakthrough. So the breakthrough has to come, which I call the golden opportunity. So what was it that changed things? There will be something that caused you to think differently, like in the example you gave of shifting to online. That's what you have to identify. That's your golden opportunity. But a golden opportunity is useless unless you do something about it. Okay. So can I keep going with that example with you? When you moved online, what was it that happened that made you think, I see what I should do? Okay, so it was, for me, it was being more visible. I needed to set up my own brand. I can't remember what speaker I was listening to, probably Gary V, I think, and it sort of twigged that, I need to be more visible if I'm selling a personality-driven sales process. So I need to be more online. Fine, and so you were convinced by that idea. So there was an alternative that you saw works. Right? Yeah, exactly. So that's part of your story. Then the fourth stage then is you're implementing that, and a transformation occurs. So a change occurs, it's a transition that takes place, and now you're reaching your original aspiration. And the great stories are those where you actually outdo your original aspiration. Right? So I was aiming for this, I did this, I responded to this, and when I implemented, I found now I was able to do this. Right? And that really gives you a powerful story.
So you could use this in business for case studies then, presumably.
Yes, case studies are great to use for this. And what I often find is a lot of people, if they don't know about these 4 steps, it's very muddy what they have. They've got a little bit of an idea here, a little bit of an idea here. What I really encourage people to do is take a case study, for example, and see if you can identify the 4 steps in it. And when you retell that story, really focus on essentially moving from one step to another. And you will find it a very strong story then.
Well, this is the point that I realized when we first started talking, Johnny, that I realized, I mean, I can tell a story, I can spin a yarn, but I think many of them are muddy. And I think this is clarity. This is about follow this structure, hone your stories, they'll work for you. And that's what I took from that, which is why you're on the show, obviously, because I wanted to share that. But I think that was an important point for me, a breakthrough point almost.
Yeah, but you know, Mike, I think that a lot of people as well, they have a natural feel for it. You know, there's people who are great raconteurs. But, you know, there are times when that experience can actually let you down as well, because it's only based on what you've experienced so far. And what I found is by teaching people this structure, they can apply that to areas where they haven't spoken about yet. You know, stories that are new to them, that they need to be telling because they're moving into a whole new area.
Sorry, Mike, I thought you were going to say something.
No, I'm waiting for you, Kirsty. You're in charge.
Oh, right. No, I mean, for me, this is absolutely, I'm mind-boggled by it, because I think a lot of people, this is the reason I like it, is I do a lot around video, and a lot of it is about personality. It's being honest about mistakes. It's being not perfect. It's about being authentic, and using this sort of system that, you know, setting the scene and what aspiration you wanted to get. Then, oh, I had this challenge, I'm not perfect, it didn't work, something went wrong. And then coming in, but then golden moment, I saw this happened, I tried this, I had this new world for me. And then which is the golden opportunity, obviously. And then finally coming through to this transformation where it actually, when I made this effort, when I made this change, it became so much more powerful, it became such a bigger deal. It connects on a human level, which works really well on video, which is why I'm very excited about it, because it's all about me. It's my show, as I've said on numerous occasions.
There's a problem with the branding on this show. We have to get that sorted out, really.
But I think the thing I'd love people to recognize is that this 4 steps that I've taken you through, I call the common narrative pathway, because now I've taught you this. You watch now any Disney movie, you watch any great story, you will see that they generally follow these 4 steps. It's like the great stories of heroes that we have. They always have failures to begin with, and then they have a golden opportunity that comes. It's from those failures that they're able to respond to that golden opportunity in a distinctive way, and then the world is transformed.
One instantly thinks of The Lion King, straight there.
Okay, that's a good example. Yeah.
Do you mean Othello by Shakespeare?
All right then.
One or two there. Okay, perfect. Okay, so in a second, Johnny, I'm going to come to you and I'm going to ask about, if people who are watching this and they want to start using storytelling for their business, what's the first thing they can do? I'm going to come to that in a second. But if people have been watching this and they think, oh, I really want to know a bit more, or I sort of want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, to connect with me, LinkedIn is the best. So I'm there as Johnny Gillett. You've got my name up in front of you here. You can find it right now, Johnny Gillett. The best way is there because I'm producing.
You're also tagged in the post that's connected to this, so you just click on there and it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of other bits and pieces around through Facebook and website and stuff, but I find with LinkedIn,
you've got some books. I'm going to bring those up in a little online course. I'm going to do that right now.
Okay.
So if people wanted to buy one of those, Johnny, and the links will be in the comment section. They're not there yet, but they will be there after the show. Johnny's going to put them in. But if somebody's thinking, well, I don't want to buy all 4, what's your starting position? What's going to get you into the storytelling, do you think? Which one of those?
Okay, well, firstly, let me just clarify that the 4th one, the one in the bottom corner says step by step. This is actually an online program. That's not a book itself. And in some ways, I would recommend people come on that. That is just 3 sessions, each session lasting 2 hours, that you can do with me live. And they run every weekend on Saturdays and Sundays, constantly repeating. And you can just come on that. You can do like 3 sessions, and that will give you a real good foundation. In fact, this is called Postmark for Biz. Postmark is a storytelling workshop that I've been doing online for earlier this year, but generic storytelling for people in all sorts of different backgrounds, different areas. But what I've done now is I've kind of tightened it up and focused on the business storytelling with it. So you can come on board with that as of October, actually.
Okay, and the link will be to that. And which is your starter book to go with that then, would you think?
Do you know what? So the books there that are blue and purple, they go together, but the purple is like the volume 2, if you like. So I would put you towards the blue book, which is called Entrepreneur. So this is a book that my wife and I have put together based on our work. She works in technology and I have an arts background. So we're completely different, but we both love storytelling. And what we've done here is we've put together a collection of folktale type stories that we have found really sort of resonate with the experience of being an entrepreneur. Okay. So this is a great one just to find a story that resonates with you. You could retell yourself. These are stories for you to retell. But also, you can find yourself in those stories. And we've just found that these stories have been really helpful in coaching entrepreneurs.
That sounds absolutely awesome. Now, thank you for that. I really appreciate it. The links will be in the comments, folks, so you can find them there. Just before we go, if anyone does have any questions or anything, please, we do have a little time. You can fire them in. Johnny will no doubt answer them for you.
Yeah. So, Johnny, I'm coming to you now. I've given you a second to talk. And if people have any comments, I'm sure they'll come in now. Somebody's watching this. They want to become more proficient. What is the first step with storytelling? What's the first small thing that they can do that's going to make them kind of start their journey into storytelling?
Yeah, I think for confidence, really, you need to find your story that you're going to tell. And there are many stories you could possibly tell, but let me help you find your story. And here's my top tip. think of a failure, okay? A time when you dropped the ball for whatever reason, and what you learned from that experience. That's the key thing, okay? And it's a bit like what you said before, Kirsty, about thinking through, you know, a story of failure, but then the way that you have to respond to a golden opportunity. So I would say, find a story from your life that you can identify that where you failed, but it taught you something, and then you applied that learning. It's got to be applied, the learning, and you saw a difference it made. And here's the key thing. Tell that story to yourself, but out loud. You can think up that story with a whole set of images in your head, I'm sure, but you need to kind of get your mouth around it. So tell the story to yourself in the mirror, okay? And actually, here's a top tip. All storytellers, professional storytellers, we know that when we've told a story 3 times, that's when we start to feel confident with it. That's when we can really play with it 3 times.
Really? Wow. Okay.
I had no idea. You're very big on this, though, in your video course, aren't you, Kirsty?
Yes. Yeah, I think getting the thing that people have in their head, and they're like, oh no, I know, I've gone through it in my head, but then the minute you say it out loud, your mouth goes, oh, we didn't have it, that was the head department had that, the mouth department, we weren't involved, we've never done it before, this is not good. So it's the same reason if you're going to do a speech, you practice it out loud, you don't practice it in your head, do you? It's the same sort of premise. So yeah, I think it's a fantastic thing to do. Yeah, definitely. So I mean, for me, Johnny, what I've got from this is, in business, sometimes it could be, imagine, you know, like a black and white cartoon, like Lion King, black and white with no singing. It gives you the basic story, but it's not very emotive. It's very difficult to connect to as an individual, and it's hard to sort of get really behind it. But then storytelling sort of adds in the color, it adds in the songs, it adds in all this animation, and it becomes this live thing that you can interact with, that you can emote to, that you can feel to. And it not only strengthens relationships, which, you know, if you're in industries like recruitment, that's relationship building is unparalleled, but it also allows you to pin sort of your experiences to it and allow to express your growth. Does that sound about right?
It's pretty much it. Yeah, I mean, very much so. And I think, yeah, it is like providing the color. And the thing is, when you tell a story, and especially if it's coming from a place of personal experience, there is so much more authenticity in that. And the listener will respond to that, and they will start to visualize and imagine that as well. Once they're doing that, they are in. They can see themselves in that place.
For me, something you said right at the outset about creating a connection, because when I've used it, stories, it is about that. Oh, well, here we go. We're going to get the same old. And then you launch into a story which either has got a moral attached to it or a message attached to it, or it's just to illustrate something, or just to break the ice a little bit sometimes. And it begins, I think, to create that connection. And that's why I do it. And I really like it for that reason, because it's emotive. You know, you said that at the beginning, combination of logic and emotion. And I think that's absolutely true. And especially, as you said, you know, that we've all looked at PowerPoints with loads of numbers on, and then our intelligence chips melt slightly, and we don't, as opposed to, let me turn that off. Let me tell you this story. You'll love this, right? And out it comes, and the data gets included, but in a way that people remember it and really engage with it. Massively powerful, I think.
Yeah, perfect. Fantastic. Okay. So before we say thank you, I'm just going to tell everybody who we've got next week. Mike, we've got Mike Pagan on next week, I believe.
Yeah, Mr. Pagan, yes. He's going to be talking to us about mental wealth, not mental health, although there's an element of it there, hence the pun, but it's mental wealth. And the reason I've asked him to come on the show, he's got this concept of creating an inner circle of people. And I'm a big fan of that. I've been doing it all my life, and I can see the power of that. And a lot of people don't, and it's a shame. And he's really gone about it in a much more structured way than I have. He's listed out the people that you need and why you need them, and he's going to come and talk to us about that. It's going to be fascinating, I know.
Yeah, perfect. So we're all very much looking forward to that. So before we go, Gavin's put it great. It's been a great episode. So thank you very much to Johnny. You've been fantastic. I could listen to you talk about this all day. I'm genuinely sure. Yeah, so thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much. Well, thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
And then we thank you.